Have you ever met someone and felt an instant connection that you couldn't really explain? Maybe you felt like you already knew them, and maybe just when you thought you'd found the person you were supposed to be with, everything changed. And if you're in this stage right now, I probably don't have to tell you how difficult this stage can be. It's the stage where you feel completely stuck. You may feel deeply connected to the person, but at the same time, you may have no idea if you'll ever find your way back to each other. And what makes this stage even more confusing is that you might wonder, how did we even get here? If you're experiencing a twin flame connection, you probably already know that the journey isn't always the beautiful love story people make it out to be. It can be intense and it can be incredibly painful. Many people believe the twin flame journey moves through 7 stages. And as you're listening, see if you can recognize which stage you may be in right now. Stage 1 is the awakening. And interestingly, this stage can sometimes begin before you even met the other person. You may start feeling like something in your life is changing. Maybe relationships or situations that used to satisfy you suddenly don't anymore. Maybe you become more interested in spirituality. You may start noticing synchronicities, repeating numbers, or having unusually vivid dreams. Or there may simply be this feeling that something is about to change. And then this person enters your life. And that's when the awakening can become much more intense. You may start questioning things you've never questioned before, like, what do I really want? Why am I here? Why did this particular person affect me so strongly? And that's when we start moving into stage 2. Stage 2, the recognition. This is the stage that can make a twin flame connection feel different from any ordinary connection or attraction. There's often an unusual sense of recognition. You meet someone you've technically never met before, but something about them feels familiar. You might look at them and have this strange feeling of, I know you. Maybe you only known them for a week, a day, a few hours. Maybe you've only had a few conversations, but you feel unusually comfortable around them. You may tell them things you normally wouldn't tell someone you've just met. Conversations can feel effortless, and sometimes there's an incredibly strong attraction as well. But it may not always seem or be a physical attraction. It's almost as though something about this person is pulling you towards them. And because you can't explain the intensity logically, you naturally start trying to understand it. And this is often where people first come across the idea of twin flames. And then comes the stage that everybody wishes they could stay in. Stage 3, the honeymoon or connection stage. Stage 3 can feel incredible. You are connecting, you are talking constantly. You may feel seen and understood in a way you haven't experienced before. There can be a very strong emotional connection, a physical attraction, spiritual connection, or even all 3. And sometimes things move extremely quickly. You might find yourself thinking, where has this person been my whole life? Everything feels aligned. Synchronicities may seem to be everywhere. You think about them and suddenly they message you. You see repeating numbers. You hear a song that reminds you of them at exactly that right moment. And because everything feels so intense, it's easy to think, this is it. I finally found my person. But there's something about twin flames that we hear about again and again. Stage 4, triggers and testing. This is usually the stage that starts getting complicated. The same person who made you feel completely understood can suddenly bring out some of your deepest insecurities. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, jealousy, trust issues, old relationship wounds, maybe even things you thought you already healed. And sometimes the smallest situation creates an enormous emotional reaction. Maybe they don't answer a message, and logically, people get busy. But emotionally, suddenly you're thinking, why aren't they answering me? Did I do something wrong? Are they losing interest? Are they leaving? And that's because you're not necessarily reacting only to the unanswered message. You're representing or reacting to what that message means inside of you. And the other person may be going through exactly the same thing. That's why the connection can suddenly become difficult, even though neither person necessarily understand what's happening. But I want to say something here that I think is really important. Sometimes people hear that twin flames trigger each other and start believing that pain itself proves a connection is spiritual. It doesn't. Someone repeatedly hurting you doesn't automatically make them your twin flame. And believing you have a spiritual connection with somebody doesn't mean you have to accept disrespect, manipulation, or behavior that crosses your boundaries. The purpose of a mirror is to show you something. Maybe this connection is showing you where you need stronger boundaries. Maybe it's showing a fear you haven't dealt with. Maybe it's showing you that you've been looking outside yourself for reassurance. And when those triggers become intense enough, one person may start pulling away. Which brings us to stage 5. Stage 5, the runner and chaser. This is one of the most talked about parts of the twin flame journey. One person begins creating distance that's usually described as the runner. And the other person feels that distance and tries desperately to restore the connection. That's the chaser. If you've ever been the chaser, you know how exhausting this can be. You're analyzing conversations, you're rereading messages, you're wondering why they never called or they haven't called. You're thinking about what you said, what they said, what you should have done differently. And maybe you're asking yourself, how did we go from being so close to this, to having nothing? So you try harder. You reach out, you explain, you try to fix it. You look for reassurance that the connection is still there. But very often what happens is the harder one person chases, the further the other person runs. And here's something I've come to think about differently. Chasing isn't about love. Sometimes chasing is about fear. It's wanting this person to take away the uncertainty you're feeling. It's almost like saying, if you would just come back and choose me, then I could feel okay again. But that's the problem with that. If your peace depends entirely on another person's behavior, you're handed that person control over your emotional life. And eventually, this dynamic becomes exhausting for both people. Which brings us to the stage I mentioned at the very beginning. Stage 6, separation. Okay, this is the hard one. And judging from so many of the comments I've seen on this channel, this is where a lot of people feel stuck. Separation doesn't always mean absolutely no contact. Sometimes it does. Someone blocks the other person, communication stops, maybe one person moves on and enters another relationship, Sometimes separation is emotional. You may technically still communicate with this person, but the connection feels completely different. And this stage can be incredibly painful because you're grieving something that may not feel completely over. You may still feel connected with them, still dream about them, and you may still notice synchronicities. And because of that, you can get caught in a loop. Are they coming back? Are they thinking about me? What does this number mean? Was that a song or a sign? Should I reach out? Should I wait? And suddenly your entire emotional life starts revolving around what this other person may or may not be doing. That's why I think stage 6 is much more than simply being physical or physically separated from somebody. It's where you're almost forced to confront a very difficult question. Can I love this person without losing myself? And eventually something begins to change. Not necessarily because you stopped caring. You simply become tired of fighting reality. You can't force another person to communicate. You can't force them to heal. You can't force them to choose you. And you can't control when or whether somebody comes back. That's where surrender begins. Let me be clear. Surrender doesn't mean I'll stop texting them for a week so they miss me. That's still trying to control the outcome. And here's something I really want you to hear if you're currently in stage 6. Letting go doesn't necessarily mean you stop loving someone. Sometimes it means you stop losing yourself while loving them. And I actually want to do an entire video specifically about stage 6 because judging by your comments, there's a lot we need to talk about here. Especially when you feel like you've been stuck in separation for months or even years. But eventually, that inner shift can lead you into stage 7. Or even stage 7, surrender, healing, and integration. The final stage isn't simply they came back, the end. And I think that's an important distinction. There's a very romantic version of the twin flame story that says every twin flame journey is guaranteed to end in permanent romantic reunion. I don't think anyone can promise you that. People have free will. People make choices. People grow at different speeds. And sometimes people grow in completely different directions. And sometimes two people do reconnect after they've both gone through their very own growth. If that happens, the relationship may feel very different. There's less chasing, less running, less trying to convince the other person that the connection exists. There's more balance and more honesty, more consistency. But reunion isn't something you can force, and your healing can't depend on it. Because if this connection really did enter your life to awaken something within you, then your transformation matters too. Maybe you reunite. Maybe the relationship changes into something you never expected. Or maybe this person changed you in a way that prepared you for an entirely different chapter. Either way, you aren't the same person when stage 1 began. And maybe that's one of the biggest lessons of the entire journey. That's it. That's the 7 stages of the twin flame journey. Stage 1, the awakening. Stage 2, recognition. Stage 3, honeymoon and connection. Stage 4, triggers and testing. Stage 5, runner-chaser dynamic. Stage 6 is separation. Stage 7, surrender, healing, and integration. Which stage are you in right now? leave the number 1 through 7 in the comments. And especially if you're in stage 6, tell me how long you've been in that stage, in separation. What has been the hardest part for you? What are you learning? Because I'm going to make a separate video where we go much deeper into stage 6. What happens during separation, why people feel stuck there for so long, and how we begin moving forward without losing yourself in the process. And as I continue doing things a little differently on Whispers from the Angels, I want these videos to be conversations. So your comments may actually help shape what we talk about next. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and join me for the next one. I'll see you soon.